Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
February 8, 2020, the jail time edition. First up, from the New York Times, the Department of Justice has dropped its antitrust probe into automakers who sided with the state of California on the state of California emissions requirements. The investigation, which attempted to attack those who were against the Trump administration's rollback of auto emission standards, was pretty clearly a political move that the Trump administration would use all tools available to it to attack and punish anyone who disagreed with it. It certainly appeared that way at the time when the automakers simply agreed with California that they would meet the stricter standards than those sought by the Trump administration. The governor of California called this a victory for anyone who cares about the rule of law and clean air. No comment from the Department of Justice as to why they dropped the investigation. Next up, from Reuters, and our lead story today, the Pimco ex-CEO Douglas Hodge has been sentenced to 9 months in prison for his part in the Varsity Blues scandal. He was the person who utilized the bribery scheme and scandal the most, having 35, the court prosecutors called him the most culpable of the 35 parents charged. He has the longest jail time. He paid bribes totaling $850,000 over nearly 11 years to get 2 of his children in the University of Southern California and 2 into Georgetown. He tried and failed to pay bribes to get a 5th child into Loyola Marymount. So this was the longest jail time. It certainly sends a message to those who are still out there, who have not pled guilty and cooperated with the government. Next up, the undercover informant in the NCAA corruption probe avoids prison. As reported by Bloomberg, Marty Blazer III was sentenced by U.S. District Judge with no jail time. He cooperated after pleading guilty, working undercover, meeting with other representatives going forward, and this actions or his conduct was rewarded by the court with no jail time. So it also shows once again that if you cooperate with the government, go undercover, then you can have a good chance of getting your sentence reduced all the way to 0. And as our final story, we welcome a first-time news organization we've cited here on the Daily Compliance News, which is FreeMalaysiaToday. And they're reporting that Sri Lanka has arrested its ex-airline chief over Airbus bribery claims. He was identified as a person who received money from Airbus over the years, and I won't begin to try to pronounce his name, but he was the former chief executive of Sri Lankan Airlines, and he's alleged in the DPA documents to have accepted bribes on behalf of himself so that he would sign a contract with Airbus. So the fallout for Airbus continues. The countries where Airbus paid bribes, there is a political and legal reckoning now, and this will continue going forward as we see more and more fallout, backup, and other activities based upon Airbus's conduct. So once again shows the invidiousness of bribery, but that there are real consequences going forward. So we will continue to follow that story for you. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening.